It's here. We are redefining what it means to sit at the girls' table. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Girls Table, a podcast where founders, creators, and investors share their stories. Today, I'm joined by Ryan Wyatt, who currently expanded his role from leading the studios team to leading the entirety of Polygon as their president. Ryan leads a 300-person business team working to help advance the Polygon ecosystem across various products. Ryan actually started his career as a competitive Call of Duty player while still in college. He ran multiple tournaments, operations at Major League Gaming until eventually joining YouTube as a global head of gaming at the age of 27. During Ryan's time at YouTube, he created their gaming vertical and built it into the video platform's second business, generating billions in revenue. Ryan, the list goes on. You're a Forbes 30 under 30, Hollywood Reporter 35 under 35, Fortune 40 under 40, New York Times best-selling author, and now you could officially add to the list that you're the first man to officially be on the Girls Table podcast. So thank you so much for being here today and sharing your story.
I'm out of the age-based list. I don't know. I'm over the age-based list stuff. So this is a good accolade to replace all of them. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, yeah, and thank you for coming. I just want to throw it over to you. You've had such an impressive background. So is there anything that I missed?
No, I don't think so. I think that was a good abbreviated history on kind of my background. It really was a creator economy for 14 some years, the start of it up until leaving YouTube last year, or I guess a year and a half ago now, to coming over to Web3 full time. It's been fun.
Awesome. Well, I'm so excited to jump into your story. And I'd love to start off with kind of going back. So growing up, what did you want to be when you grew up? And how did people classify you? Were you an athlete, a nerd, a theater kid, or were you always just a gamer?
That's so funny. I love this question. Okay, so I was always a gamer. I started playing video games when I was 3 with the Nintendo Entertainment System with Mario. Always loved playing video games, played them throughout my entire life, still play them somewhat frequently today. Obviously, time is a little more limited. So through and through, have been a hardcore gamer. I never really thought about gaming being a career when I was young. I grew up in Northeast Ohio, a very blue collar area. The idea of working in video games was not kind of anything that ever even kind of crossed my mind. I did what a lot of kids in Ohio do. They go to Ohio State. I didn't really know what I wanted to do then. I was probably considered somebody that was, I was smart, but didn't really apply myself academically. Always did kind of the bare minimum in school because I was always distracted by wanting to do something else in life, to be honest with you. Went to school, had a ton of fun in college, no doubt, loved Ohio State, but I actually dropped out my last quarter of college and never graduated because I got a job at Machinima. And so around that time was when we went through really the first recession, the banks collapsing. It was just the housing market, all of it was really tough. A lot of people weren't getting jobs that were graduating a year before me and had already graduated. And so I was fortunate enough to get this opportunity with a company called Machinima. It was a small startup in Los Angeles that was trying to build basically, I'm dating myself here, but the MTV of gaming on YouTube. And so they had just raised a small round. They had, I was doing the stuff with Major League Gaming while in college. I was running kind of MLG's tournament infrastructure and commentating and do all these random gigs while in college, right? And I got connected into that because I was doing esports competitively, right? So there was a little bit of oh, okay, well, now I can make some money, helping this company MLG out and so forth. And then Machinima was this awesome opportunity to move out to LA. And it really was the early days of YouTube. So this is, 2009. YouTube had only been around 4 years now, right? At this point, YouTube was founded in 2005. And so the idea was hey, maybe people will upload videos and want to do different content creation and so forth on it. And so, this is very early days. It sounds crazy now talking about it. And creators couldn't monetize on YouTube, right? So the only people that could run ads basically were what they called multi-channel networks. They were these preferred partners, a very, very small group of individuals, single digits that had the right to basically sell digital display ads and video ads. And so basically what Machinima did is they started to work with content creators to put them inside of their network and run ads on their video content to make money. And this was basically the this is the start of the idea of creators monetizing, making money on YouTube. And so because I did that and did that in college, then now this is my first full-time job. I said, screw school. If this doesn't work out, I'll come back and graduate. It's not a big deal. But like, I got a job in the gaming industry in LA. I'm out of here, right? Like, I'm out of here times 10. You know, and then I was there for 4 years. Long story short, I got close with YouTube because we were like a really close partner to YouTube. I used to send, you know, a lot of, you know, long-winded memos on the things that YouTube isn't doing well. And so basically one day Susan takes over. So Susan, Google started in her garage. She was instrumental in the ads business for Google, which is Google's business. She takes over YouTube, and she's like, why are we not doing anything in gaming? Because they had just kind of completely abandoned it. And so she's like, I want a head of gaming at YouTube. Go get me a head of gaming at YouTube. And they were like, let's talk to that guy that sent all those wild ass emails all the time about all the things that we should be doing at YouTube around gaming, and let's see what he thinks. And then 15 interviews later, including one with Susan that was like 2 hours long in Mountain View, I got the job, and I was 27. And so I knew it better than anybody else because nobody had longer history in that category than me, right? Because it started when I started with it. So although I didn't have like the overall overarching professional experience, nobody knew the creator economy better than me. And I full stop believed that on the gaming side. So I felt really good going in interviews, but I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be a peer to a bunch of people in their mid 40s that have been at Google for a decade. And they're going to bring this guy in who's 27, who's rough around the edges to come run it. And they took a shot on me. So I will love Google and YouTube for all of my days because of it. Had a little bit of imposter syndrome early on, and started taking it on. And yeah, it turned out to be the second biggest business at YouTube to this day.
And I mean, you were 27. Like, how did you get over that imposter syndrome? Were you scared or felt like you couldn't handle the pressure of being so high up at such a young age?
Oh, I definitely was. I'd be like lying. I mean, I certainly tried to carry a little bit of like confidence that wasn't the case, but it was, you know, for me, and self-reflection was like very apparent. It was dual-sided because in one way, when I sat at the table with those folks, I was like, nobody in this group knows YouTube creators better than me and what they want. But every one of you have like 7 times the experience as business people, right? And so I looked at it as like, that part was really intimidating, right, to me. And I had a lot to learn. I was also a college dropout. These people are MBAs from Harvard, MIT, Stanford, right? And so you have literally a college dropout who knows gaming and creator ecosystem surrounded by some of the most like prestigious execs that Google has to offer. And so there is if you were not intimidated or didn't have the confidence, then you would have been arguably too arrogant, right? And so for me, what happened was I think there was this like great synergy where everybody could learn from each other, right? Like I could provide them with like, what is it like to actually intimately understand this audience that you're building for? And how do you make me like a world-class, you know, business lead? And over the 8 years that I was there, I'm like so grateful. It almost feels like I went through my own schooling on how to do that and how to scale a company and all of that. And so it was just a very, very, very unique moment. You know, my first day at YouTube, I got pulled out of Google orientation to meet with Susan, right? So it was like hitting the ground running. And now you're like you're 27, you've got exposure to the CEO on a day-to-day basis at YouTube. I mean, it was just a wonderful, unique experience that I'm grateful for.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I think it's something that people struggle with a lot. It's just getting through that, where there's one side of it where you feel like you deserve to be at the seat at the table. You know it better than anybody else. But it's the other side where you're like, wait, fuck, I'm 27 years old. Why am I here? So that's awesome. And then how did the YouTube change from when you first started to the 8 years later when you ultimately left?
Yeah, I mean, a lot. You know, YouTube grew so much when you go from like, you know, hundreds of millions of users to billions of users. And if you think about a lot of the issues that we ran into with like child safety and fringe content and bad actors uploading to it, and how you protect that and how you monetize a creator ecosystem outside of ads, and a lot of different challenges. And so for me, I think of my key learnings there over the course of 8 years, like as it grew, was how do you maintain kind of an even keel demeanor in both when things are not going well and when things are going well? Like, I think it's really important because you don't want to ride the highs too much or the lows too much, because you get beat up and bruised along the way, but you also have these, euphoric wins. And so it's not good to actually react in any one of those swings. So I think being even keel and in moments of like big decision making, people are already, whether they're impulsive or they're emotional or whatever it is, are already bringing like feelings to the table. So the more that you can create like a better balance within the conversation, I think the better decision making that you can make. And I just think like all of these big things that we faced over the course of 8 years, getting a seat at the table. And even when I wasn't the one involved, like I wasn't involved in child safety stuff, right? But I had a seat at the table to like hear how these conversations played out, how Susan and how my boss, who's the chief business officer, was thinking through all this stuff. And like, that is invaluable lessons. Like you can't teach that, you got to be there and live it out. And so those big moments, and I think in the moments of like when there was a crisis, I actually benefited, the most of seeing that secondhand. Because I know at the time, if I was handling that, like if I was the CEO of YouTube, there'd be like no shot that I would have been able to handle that at that time under that pressure and with the stakes so high, right? And so that, you're like, oh gosh, I couldn't do this. And so you see Susan doing it and you're like, damn, that's like what I want to be. Like she is super smart. She gets it. She's cool, calm, and collected. She's like the voice of reason, and so you just see that on display in a front row. You just learn so much, and especially for me as a bad student, I was much better at learning hands-on. And so that was like hands-on experience for me, and you can't get in a textbook.
Yeah. Was there ever a time in the beginning where you were shut down? Like somebody was just like, hey, you're just starting out, or you're 27, you have no idea what you're talking about? Or were people pretty open to your opinion even to start?
So a little bit of both. So I think Google does a good job of teaching execs how to be candid but respectful. So I never was like explicitly shut down in that way, but certainly many moments where, one thing that I had to learn to get better is I would come in and be like, we need to be doing this for gaming. Like this is the right thing to do for gaming, and didn't really think about all these other verticals and all these different categories and all the things that YouTube's facing. And so basically I'd come in, like as this passionate individual with like a plan that would be great for gaming, but then didn't think about how does that puzzle piece fit into YouTube? And how do I think about making sure when I think of things, I'm thinking holistically about YouTube, and so that YouTube is winning. And so early years, I struggled to get things through in the way that I wanted to, because I had too much of a like myopic and selfish view. I'm like, I'm not a gaming, so all I should care about is gaming. What happened over time that I think I got better with was having a lot more tact on, hey, this is a really important thing for alternative monetization for gaming creators, but I think it's really applicable to vloggers and lifestyle, and sports could use it for, subscription business, and started to think about these products holistically about how others could benefit, in which case I could get people rallied around them and at a table be like, yeah, this is yes, it's good for gaming, but more importantly, it's good for YouTube. And so I began to have a lot more tact in how I got things done. And people sometimes lazily call it, politics, but I think it's more like collaboration and leading by influence is really what it is. And so I got much better at that over time because of the first couple of years of getting shut down.
Yeah. And I just think that's awesome. I'm actually 27 right now, and hearing that you were ahead of gaming, I'm like, damn, I feel like I would have had imposter syndrome 100%. But I just want to dive in. I know gaming, and I personally think gaming will be one of the main drivers of adoption into Web3. So I'm curious when you first dove into the space, and what was the initial value you saw in the technology?
Yeah, so I actually was never really into crypto. Crypto from a financial element. I wasn't opposed to it, but it just was like, cool. Yeah, that sounds good. It's just like it was just not my area of expertise. So I had friends, particularly with like the launch of Ethereum, and be like, oh, like decentralized apps, like they could be a real thing. And this is, many years ago, but I was so focused on YouTube and stuff that I'm like, no, I'm kind of doing what I want to do. Where I really started to get into it was actually, I'm like, wow, each year people are spending so much money on digital goods, right? In general, whether it's cosmetic skins and games, whatever it is, it's an astonishing amount of money. And I'm like, people are going to inevitably, you're going to hit some point where people are like, enough's enough. Like when I buy something, I want to own it like I own physical items, right? Like I want to be able to trade it if I want to, or give it to somebody, borrow it, lend it. I want to be able to sell it. I want to maybe hold on to it forever, right? And so as somebody that's a gamer still, I see like I play Valorant. It's one of my favorite games made by Riot Games. They just dropped a new skin pack the other day. I paid $80 for it. and that's it. Like, it's a cosmetic item. I'll never get to like sell it. I'll never let a friend borrow it, any of it, right? And so you're already just, I'm out $80 on it. And so I started to see game developers that I really respected and liked. They were coming in, they're like, you know what? We want to launch a blockchain based game. You know, we think there's some stuff that we can do with these like digital economies that would be really interesting. And I was like, dude, what is a blockchain game? You know, like, what do you even mean by that, right? And so the more I spent time on kind of, and I was looking at these like things as separate, right? And they like, my red pill moment was these worlds converging, and I'm like, oh my God, like, of course these like a blockchain where everything is verifiable, you can see who owns it, these items sit there, the way to transact them is really easy, you can do a bunch of different things with them. It was like, yeah, this is a no-brainer. You can get close to some of that in like a centralized way, you know, like a SQL database, kind of what Steam is doing with their marketplace, but really like actually owning it and having the fluidity of that ownership, it's a product feature. Like, I just looked at like building the economy and like the digital items on chain. Like, who cares about like crypto? Like, just forget all that. It's just like you unlock a new product feature in the way that you can operate like and create a game when you build a subset of it or all of it if you want on chain. And so for me, I'm like, yeah, for sure. Like, I'm in on it. And so I was like fully in on it. And then I started to look around, was like, just going to advise on Web3. And then Polygon came up, and I'm like, nope, this is like, we're going to do this, right? I feel like I can see this very clearly over a 10-year period. I'm like super hungry to go do it. Everybody used to laugh at me when they said like, nobody wants to watch people play video games. They want to play them. It turned into like 350 million people logged in on YouTube, watching every day, generating billions of dollars for YouTube. So I was like, I'm not listening to people. I'm a gamer. I get it. I think there's going to be enough people like me. I don't know if it's 1 billion people or 100 million people, but this is cool. This is something here, and I'm going on the journey, right? And so for me, it was like rewinding back to day one of creator economy with this and doing it all over again. And I'm stoked about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and now you're at Polygon, so I'd love to jump into what is Polygon as a whole. Like, most people know the company as a layer 2, but there's so much more than that Polygon's doing right now.
There is, like, it's a lot. Yeah, there's no doubt. You know, at the end of the day, like the simplified version of just Polygon being like a decentralized protocol that you can build apps on, like decentralized apps, right? And so that's really what we're focused on. And we're doing a variety of different things to make that happen. We're doing stuff with Fortune 500 companies. We're doing stuff with banking and DeFi and fintech. We're doing stuff with games. We're really, you know, we've improved on-ramps with marketplace and wallet integrations. We're focused on, you know, really spinning up PFP projects now, as you saw with kind of Utes and a launch pad and getting more people to build, right? Like, that's been an area of weakness that we can totally do a great job at. Like, we have all the skills and all the tools in our basket. Like, we just got to focus on it. So I'm excited about that. And then on top of it, on the tech side, you know, how do you scale this thing, right? Like, if you look at kind of our POS chain as it exists today, it gets the job done in the environment that it's in, right? Like, if you know, the games that are operating and transacting on it, gas fees are low, people are happy, but it's not like it's not your end game, right? Like, in order to really scale Polygon, we needed to figure out how do you, in orders of magnitude, improve the protocol? Like, how do you have 100x the users and 100x the transactions, 100x the sales volume? And you needed a better scaling solution for that. So in 2021, we spent $1 billion acquiring 3 different ZK teams. And basically, in layman's terms, is just like with zero knowledge, it allows us to actually, you know, really not infinitely, but materially scale a protocol that then can actually handle the workload that we want it and aspire it to be as we continue to build out like Web3 and experiences and users on board. So we launched the testnet of that. That's been exciting. You know, we will launch our ZK solution this year. It'll be a big moment for Polygon. I think it's like existential for Polygon because like if you don't land it, you're not in a position to scale. And I think all these protocols, whether it's an alt L1 or an ETH scaling solution L2, you have to solve the scaling problem, right? And so for us, you know, we've been building this ship with these like awesome partnerships and these great, you know, people. And like, we're like, okay, like do we have a big enough boat over the next 5 years to fit all of this stuff we've done? And so, you kind of like, you're running these things in parallel, right? You're not doing them in sequential order. And so it's been a big moment for us where we're like, we have to nail this. Like, we have to have a scaling solution. And so a lot of pressure on the ZK team, and they've delivered, with this test net, and just really exciting. So landing that this year is going to be a big focus. Business as usual with what you kind of know about Polygon, and then an emphasis on PFP and art, like the NFT creator communities. We have all these great on-ramps to work with them, so that's a big area too. And so with my role, Polygon Labs is our company that basically is the largest contributor to the protocol, and I run that, right? And that's what we call Polygon Labs, and that's what I'm the president of. And before was that, we had smaller groups. Polygon Studios was just gaming, NFTs, and metaverse, and so now this kind of rolls up all of the initiatives that we're working on, and it allows us just to stay like a little bit more, like focused and be able to move quickly as we scale, which is really, really important.
So in the layer 2, you're working on the scaling solution, but I think another big part is like getting these individuals who weren't in Web3, weren't in crypto, and getting them actually understanding the value behind it. So you obviously worked in gaming a ton. So what elements of Web3 games do you think will need to resonate with traditional gamers in order to really get them on board?
Yeah, it'll take a little bit, right? Like, I think of this as, when I think of game, there are things like that are right now, like Starbucks and the loyalty rewards, that just makes a ton of sense. You can just hit the ground running and roll. Like, I think Odyssey's awesome. Then there's gaming, which it's really complicated in a lot of ways, because you can do, there's this game called Pirate Nation on Polygon, and it's made by the people that created Farmville. And everything that you do is on chain, right? It's a basic rudimentary game like Farmville. You're pirates, you have pirates, they do different quests and tasks, you build things, you you farm, whatever, you do different things. And there's it's fun. And I actually genuinely enjoy it. But let's be honest, it's Farmville. It's not like this AAA shooter that 180 people worked on over 5 years and shipped, right? But it's fun, and it's really uniquely cool to Web3, because every action that you do is actually on chain. So it's 100% of all actions taken in the game are on chain. That's really cool, and let's see where it goes, right? But that's one end of the spectrum where you're that's a full Web3 game, right? In every sense of the word, that is a full Web3 game. There is nothing that's happening off chain. Then you have Midnight Society, also a game building on Polygon. Bunch of former AAA devs, from Gears of War, from Call of Duty, they're coming together. Dr. Disrespect is the founder. He's a, former game designer for Call of Duty. He's now one of the biggest, YouTube streamers and creators, gaming creators in the world. They're coming together, and what they did is, in their game, it's just the membership pass is an NFT, right? So it's you want a membership, you can buy in. If you own the membership, the way that they're making the game is they constantly are up, they allow everyone access to alpha, a really premature build of the game. And they keep building the game together in parallel with the community. So it's graphics, it's like packages come out or map changes come out or so forth. They update it with the community. And those who have a membership pass get first access to it and can provide developers feedback through it. And so that part of it is the NFT gated experience. The rest of it's not. The rest of it's it's not on chain. It's all off chain stuff. But just the on chain part is this membership piece. So I say that because you basically have two opposite sides of the spectrum, like a AAA team working on an Unreal Engine, beautiful, kind of battle royale shooter, and then you've got this Farmville-esque game that literally every action's on chain. And so I'm excited. We'll show up big at GDC. We'll be there in present. We're going to kind of show this stuff off. And then what I think this is your V2, right? V1 was play to earn, Ponzi-nomic-esque games, whether intentionally or unintentionally. It showed this kind of reality of what can you do when you own these digital goods. It brings a lot of things in. Brought bad actors in, right, who manipulated, and it brought a lot of entrepreneurs in who was wow, this is amazing product features that we can kind of do cool stuff with. Now you're seeing the dawn of V2 Web3 games. Both examples I would consider Web3 games, varying degrees of what's on chain and not. And then when those things continue to work and hit, I think you continue to see more and more adoption inside of games. The other thing that will happen is this stuff the crypto element becomes much more passive in the background. Like Starbucks Odyssey, you got a bunch of people that don't even realize they're NFT holders. You have Reddit, like Reddit was like anti-NFTs, and then all of a sudden we do it, and the digital collectibles, and a bunch of people on Reddit love it and eat that stuff up. So there's this huge allergic reaction to Web3, to crypto, and that's fine. Like, that's okay. Like, to each his own. There's good reason for that. You know, we had a horrific year with some of the bad actors in our space, but my decade-long vision has literally not changed one bit, because when that stuff becomes more passive, people are just going to love the product features that it unlocks. The long-winded answer, I'm sorry, but that's how I think about gaming. I'm super bullish on it. Yeah.
No, and I definitely want to get into Starbucks, but I think I want to go back. Like, I'm playing devil's advocate because I'm obviously really intertwined with Web3, but like, why do you need every action on chain? Like, I think one of the biggest drivers that I saw with gaming was like NFT worlds. And it's crazy now because Minecraft switched, but like the interoperability between assets, like you just bought the skins in one game and you can't carry them over to another game. They're stuck on that game, that's it. And if you want to go play another game, you don't own it. And it's like, that's where I see the huge value add, where you actually own the pieces, you get to carry it. I mean, I was a big Mario player, so like I would get all the different like Toad and everything else and all the special ones. Then you go to a different game and you have to go get it again. Well, it's like, well, if I earn that character, it should continue with me. And I think, like, why do you need every action on chain? Like, what is that showing?
I don't know that you do, by the way. Like, I think of it, I actually will be interested to see what they come out of it and where that is. Like, right now, I think they're simply early explorers, like they were with Farmville, and so they are looking at what they can do. I don't know that you do, and I think, like, again, it's a spectrum as well. Like, I don't think it'll be interesting. Like, you could definitely offload some of that stuff, and it doesn't need to be on chain. In fact, it costs like a reasonable amount of, even though Polygon's gas is low, it's like a lot. Like, scaling that game becomes expensive, right? If you're not putting the gas costs on the users, you want to cover it or whatever it is. So I'm with you. But I look at it more at a different point of, I'm actually curious and not skeptical, right? I'm like, you show me like what you can do with that. I'm like interested in going down the rabbit hole. If it's a team that made Farmville, right? Like, yeah, okay, I don't know. Like, let's see what happens with it. I use them as great examples. Neither one of those ones may work, right? There's like, because of all these different things that you can do, there's like 90% of the stuff will fail, 10% will work, and then people will take that 10% and you'll get your next class of games. This is very much like what happened with, you know, shitty mobile games on phones, right? Like, people put their nose up to all of those mobile games. Then big publishers like laughed them out of the room. And then they were like, wait, they made how much money? Like, maybe we should do a mobile game. And then all of a sudden mobile games went from like Flappy Bird, where you're like hitting the finger and like flying a bird in between pipes, to like, I'm playing Diablo Immortal now, this like high fidelity in like the course of 8 years, whatever, right? Or 10 years. So this is why I think like, a lot of the way there's Steve Jobs like said something one where it's just like you just have to like connect the dots over time, and you kind of like taking a leap of faith and be like, the net will appear kind of thing, right? So my thought process is, all of you tinker with all these different ways to make Web3 games. Put it all on chain, put like very little on chain, put just digital items on chain, you know, have Prada come in, do a backpack NFT job. And if you own the Prada NFT backpack, maybe you can use it inside of like 10 different games, and you can like get a discount or a physical experience in Prada. And instead of Prada doing like a direct licensing deal, they can own that digital good. They can add all this like fun utility. They can partner with all these different games. That Prada backpack that you bought NFT, you can take in all these different games. And there is a way to do interoperability, right? But you have to go to each one of those games and be like, create this digital asset. Like, if Ryan owns this NFT, this digital asset inside of your game is a Prada backpack, and he can use it. So I actually think you will start to see some of that. And I also think those who build in Web3, they'll be very different than the territorial large AAAs that we see, because even them are changing. Great example, look at Fortnite getting like Halo and stuff inside of their game, getting the Marvel universe and stuff inside of their game. This idea of like cross collaboration and sharing the total addressable market is something that people are opening up to. And NFTs and stuff like digital collectibles and digital ownership inside of games open up a really actually interesting door of interoperability. It's just like non-gamers use it the wrong way. They're like, oh, I'll take my like AK-47 from Counter-Strike into Valorant. It's like, okay, dude, first of all, like, one proprietary game engine, different things, like, it's an impossible thing what you just laid out. So I think we've had the wrong people talking about gaming in Web3. So I'm like, it's good that we have like more people that get gaming speaking about it. But yeah, that's my thoughts. I don't know. Like, to answer your question, we'll see what on-chain is. I'm having fun with it. It's fun to see every action on chain. Time will tell. I think the cool stuff, what they do is because you do these actions and quests on chain, when you produce it, it's minting like items, right? So like you just minted, when you did the quest, you minted the iron ore, the cotton or the wood or whatever it is. And so some of that's cool because then you actually can see the minted supply of these things. You can have like actual economics around it. So they might do something pretty cool with it, but time will tell.
I know you mentioned play to earn gaming a little bit, or we saw like pay to play. We saw both models. Do you see that in the future of Web3, or do you see less of the play to earn and more of the rewarding side of things, where if you actually get an asset in the game, then you're rewarded for it, you get to actually track this? Like, where do you see kind of the main drivers of adoption for that?
Play to earn, like the economics don't necessarily make sense to me, but the spirit of this idea that you can reward users for engaging in your game definitely exists, right? And like value creation can still hurt. Mm-hmm. I think play to earn got like a little carried away with truly establishing economies that were Ponzi economies. Where the only way to kind of like things go up into the right was more users spending more money coming in, and it created like a bad behavior. But I do want to like parse out that I believe there are a lot of cool things that you can do when people engage for long sessions and come back, that they earn something for their loyalty, and that thing that they earn has value. Now, this idea that like you can create sustainable loops where like people can make their whole living off of it, little skeptical, right? But I think that's why I think there's a half truth in play to earn that is interesting, right? On the pay to play, that stuff's never like pay to win, pay to play. Like there's that pay to win is, I mean, shit. I love that Diablo Immortal game, and they raked me over the coals on money in order to keep moving forward. So I don't think it's going anywhere.
I mean, I think even Step In, which I think we both could say was a great example of like pay to earn, and I love the idea of it, but it was a whole saturated market where you had to, as you mentioned, continue to pay, continue to send it out, and eventually like people need to switch to dollars, and it was going to bring the token price down. So I think we're going to see what happens, but I think something that really excites me too is more of that corporate structure and rewarding different users for different corporations. So for instance, Starbucks. So how are you able to obtain a corporation such as Starbucks to actually use Polygon and build a rewards program on there?
We were just very, very charming with them. No, all jokes aside, they actually have an incredible team. So each one of these kind of Fortune 500 stories are a little bit different. So Starbucks has Adam Brotman, who basically created the original Starbucks rewards program. He has his own company. He worked with, I believe it's called Form 3. He worked with Starbucks and was like, look, we're the team that came up with the original rewards program. We have this really awesome idea about what we could do with rewards and where we could take loyalty if we did it on chain. So I say that because like Adam's the genius here. All we did was help like prop him up on the protocol and like work their, be helpful hand on the Web3 side. They were really smart. They had already done a bunch of due diligence. They kind of narrowed it down to 2 protocols by the time they reached out to us. So like, I say that just because that team is ahead of the game, right? Like they know what they're doing. They get it. They have a vision. They got the right people executing. And that is like, again, when we talk about Spectrum, that's the best, Fortune 500 company Web3 strategy, right? And then you have people that are like, I just want to dabble and get involved. So Starbucks, I get, that was all of them. And we just kind of really helped them be on Polygon. We're, the carbon neutral. We have a great team of people that have Web 2 expertise and Web 3 expertise. I think that makes Polygon pretty unique. If you look at our backgrounds, you've got a leadership team that's from Google and Facebook and Amazon and EA that were all executives at those companies. And you're mixing it with this like incredible native Web 3 team. And so I just think when we come into a room with any of these partners, I think we're the best people at the table. I really do believe that. I think over time that'll change because these people that know Web 2 and Web 3 are unicorns right now. Over the next 2 or 3 years, there'll be more and more of those folks. So I do think of it as like a unique moment in time that we have to be like specifically equipped to really handle these partners and bring them on board. And that has then basically kicked out a flywheel, right? Because then when Starbucks builds, Meta picks us for the minting part, right? And all of these different partners really build. You then get the partners like Nike where they're like, oh yeah, we like already chose Polygon. So like they came, they're coming to us and like, we're building on Polygon. We're doing this. This is our launch plan. how can we help, right? So you have that whole different, like, there's all kind of different things within that sequence. But I think it's the setting up the team, the way that we've set it up. I really try to replicate the way kind of YouTube worked with top creators, of how you work with top partners, how you bring them along in the process from initial outreach to technical implementation to partner management to go to market, right? There's like a really, robust process there that just keeps us on top of our game. So I think it's all of it. And yeah, I think this, last year and this year, it's this like white space and blank canvas where PFP stuff was really saturated in 21. Solana and ETH kind of owned that. So we were like, if this is just what Web3 is going to be, this is nothing, right? So where is the big Web3 stuff going to be? And so Polygon was like, let's go own that. Nobody owns that. So like loyalty and rewards, like I think we're the top with Fortune 500. I think we're the top with gaming. We're one of the top with DeFi, right? And like let's go own these other areas while everybody's kind of like all up on PFP projects right now. So that's what we spent all year doing.
And what about for the Fortune 500 companies that aren't as bullish, that don't yet have picked you guys? You guys are maybe doing some more outreach, but that they would benefit from your reward program on Polygon. What's the main backlash you're getting? You don't do any outreach. It's all inbound.
We don't do any outreach. No, I think there's a time and place where maybe we'll have an opportunity to breathe and sell people on Web3. But everyone we work with, they have some level of we're interested. We're like our digital strategy, or we want to go big, or we just want to dabble and learn. But we're not going to anybody and be like, hey, you should think of Web3 and you should think of Polygon. I just say that because I really want to give credit to all of those. I don't want to discredit any of those partners, because it was their support and excitement to enter the space. And again, it's varying sizes. Like Macy's entered with us via Suite, to do something cool for the parade. It's small, but it was awesome, right? And they did, you've got the Cavs launched yesterday on, a NFT pass for the 2022-23 season that has physical stuff, physical experiences and so forth if you own it. And so I give them credit because these people are like, hey, let's dabble. And then you've got Meta that's like, well, we're going to Instagram, you're going to be able to mint and display NFTs on Polygon, and, Starbucks and so forth, and what Nike's doing. So varying degrees, but we haven't sold on anybody. But we do just try to help be authentic and figure out how they land it, how they go to market, help them with kind of the technical hurdles and challenges. And that's what we're here for.
And are a lot of these Fortune 500 companies trying to hide the tech? Because Starbucks didn't need to come out, be like, oh, we're utilizing NFTs for our corporate rewarding. It could have really just been like any other. Here's your gold star. We're using the technology in the background to be able to reward you. They didn't need to say this is NFTs and through the blockchain, we're going to be able to reward you. So are there some companies that want to utilize Web3 but don't want people to know?
Yeah, I kind of a fan of that too. And not in the way where you're it's disingenuous or malice of hiding it, but it seems like the technical terms we use are very irrelevant. So they did. It was cool that Starbucks embraced it, right? I think the way that they talked about it is kind of how I think about it as well, where it's blockchain product feature, stamps, aka NFTs. This is what we're doing. So if you're hardcore, here's this blog post. But a user that enters in, you just got a stamp. You could sell that stamp. You never use the word NFT. You don't have to worry about blockchain. Go to Nifty Gateway. You can transact on it, all this stuff, right? Reddit, digital collectibles. I don't think it's being done in a way that's disingenuous. I think it's it's bad marketing, NFTs and blockchain and, wallets and ledgers and all this different stuff. We're just the 1% nerds right now that love this Web3 space. And so it's highly technical now. But over time, what you'll see is the technical conversations will start to be a much, much smaller part of the space, as the 99% of normal people that come in that are not tech enthusiasts on Web3 and are just using consumer experiences on top of it, right? People aren't talking about, the way email protocols and stuff when they're sending emails, right? They're like, oh, I use Gmail. Yeah. They're not oh, what email protocol are you using? Blah, blah, blah. All this conversation. So I think you're going to basically in general see way more of that strategy from big companies. And I think it's the right one. It's definitely what I would be doing.
Honestly, same. I was so shocked when Starbucks came out and they said oh, we're utilizing NFTs. I'm like, oh God, they're going to get so much backlash because everybody thinks of it, especially right now in this bear market, as a scam. And they're like, why do I want that? I just want a rewarding program. So it was interesting that they did that.
Yeah, I like it. I think it was a good mix, right? It was a way to like acknowledge the infrastructure it was building on as a big win, and then in the actual experience make it more passive, right? I think it was a good win-win for them.
And a good win-win for you guys if obviously they're hyping up Polygon and utilizing you.
Yes, we mass adoption. I mean, in a perfect world, everybody keeps building on Polygon, but I think it's good, having all these different protocols in the space with different opportunities, experiences, and we will be a multi-chain world. I think it's like an important part of the future of Web3. So yeah, but yes, I think disproportionately a lot of the Fortune 500 companies have been going on Polygon.
And what are the main differentiating factors that Polygon has compared to other layer twos?
Team right now, I think, is the biggest thing, right? I really do believe it's a team thing. I think next it will be our tech. Like right now, when we have the ZK tech stack fully rolled out, then we have team and tech. Now again, all of these things are for a finite amount of time. Like you don't ever have like our team and tech stack. We will be like unicorns for a moment in time, and we just need to capitalize on that moment in time. But I do think as the protocol level tech advances, a lot of these things won't be materially different. Like I think a lot of things, if you over the course of let's say 5 or 6 years, you're going to see high TPS. You're going to see like the ability for instantaneous kind of finality on some of these purchases and so forth. So I do think the protocol uniqueness that we obviously spend a lot of time discussing today goes away, which is great, right? It's like people aren't arguing too much in like technical folks, but people are like about Google Cloud versus AWS. Like who's like sitting around having coffee right now arguing about like which one of those things are better? Like I think most of us are like, yeah, those are both pretty good, cloud infrastructure solutions, right? Like 99.9% of us will just say that. I think that's kind of how you'll look at the protocols in 5 or 6 years. And so in that moment of time, how do we capture it? And like, a little bit of carpe diem there. Because then the big deciding factor, let's say 5 years from now, is you want to build and be where people are. Like anybody can create like a video uploading website, but YouTube is YouTube, right? And TikTok can still spawn up, right? Like that's going to happen. YouTube's really big and TikTok's really big and Twitch is really big, right? But, there's not an infinite amount of video platforms. And I think there's something similar in the protocol stuff. So how do you build that uniqueness of surrounding developers and communities with, folks that are excited to collaborate and work together and build together?
Yeah, having that first mover advantage, I think is going to be so important as you're mentioning. So aside from kind of Polygon as a whole and actually the layer two, like you guys are investing a lot in this space. And I think I also saw you yourself are doing kind of a venture partner at Bitscraft. It's a bear market. Things are a little weird. People don't want to invest their money. So where do you see the space heading and what are you excited about in Web3 today?
It's a good question. I think one, generally, obviously a cool down, which is fine. Like 21 and 22 crypto VC Web3 spend was a lot of money put into the space, right? So I think sitting back and the valuations resetting back to normal prices is good for it is good for founders and it's good for investors. Like I know that it doesn't sound intuitive, but like founders are going to have to go through these like down rounds now, which will be really difficult. Like you raise high, expectations are really high, right? To deliver that. And so I do think actually net, there's a lot, there will be good that comes from it, but it comes at a cost, right? I think I read something around like 20,000 crypto jobs have been lost in layoffs and so forth. And so it comes at it, but I think these are very like defining moments where people need to put up like real Web3 use cases and experiences. And when those start to happen, then people know what to look for. And then you'll see money start to flow back in a significant way. So unfortunately, this is kind of the ebb and flow of what is needed in a space. Like life doesn't just move up and to the right, unfortunately. And so I think it's going to go, challenging times creates like the most important projects. And not to be like cheesy and cliche, but I really believe that. And so there is kind of like a silver lining in what is otherwise will be a dark year for the venture and investment side. For us, we have a $100 million fund. We invest in projects of all sizes. We write check sizes of all sizes into builders that are building on Polygon, right? Like different decentralized apps. We've written, a $25,000 check to, millions, right? Depending on the project. And those are projects that build on Polygon. So we are, how we look at it is like, we now have learnings too, right? Like that's a big difference. A lot of that 2021, 22 bunch of speculative bets, you don't know, right? Like I have no idea what Web3 is going to be. So like, this could be interesting. And like, kind of, we were talking about gaming, some things are gonna be on chain, some won't, right? Like this might be cool. This might not. What is play to earn? What are guilds, right? All these different things that come up. You learn a lot, right? You start to see what is like bullshit, what is real, right? And there's a lot of bullshit in this space. And so you start to parse out the real stuff from it. And then you can go put your money in the real stuff, which then like permeates through the ecosystem and then better stuff sprouts up, right? It's like you want to find the good seeds and then you want to clear out all the weeds and replant those good seeds. And that's like what we're going through right now.
Yeah, and you touched a little bit about valuations, and I'm fully with you that, valuations were insane. Like a year ago, we were fighting over valuations. There was no pushback. It was like, you get it, you hold on tight, and you would invest as much as you can. And now it's like, okay, obviously valuations are attempting to go down. I think they still need to go down significantly. As you mentioned, we're going to see a ton of down rounds. Do you have a specific number that you think like pre-seed, seed, Series A should be actually raising money at in terms of valuations?
No, I think it's so like, obviously the businesses are so different here, right? Like whether you're launching another protocol or you're launching a game or you're building a social app on top of, a protocol, like, so it varies. But, I think ultimately, if you start to reset back into 2020, 2021 valuations relative to the projects, that's probably like a little bit, that's kind of where when you talk about them needing to come down, I agree. And I think that would be like those averages that came out of there, like particularly the second half of 2020, or sorry, the second half of 2021 is probably where they were still a little outlandish, but somewhat realistic. They got out of control in first half of 22, right? And then they blew out the 22 kind of valuation averages. So yeah, I'm looking probably in that level of a reset for everything. Yeah. It's also like token versus equity warrants, right? Like there's a lot of like token warrants versus equity. There's so much like to consider on some of that stuff. And that's like another element as an investor, right? Like when you look at an equity bet versus a token bet, you're wearing like an entire different hat. On how you look and scrutinize that deal in my mind.
I mean, how many Web3 companies have we seen gone public? If they don't have a token, there's no real other liquidation event unless they merge, which we'll see a lot of companies merge together. They go
still acquisitions,
public, get
like
acquired.
Artifact, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but even so, like, is it that big of a jump in terms of valuations when people are merging? It's more of the necessity of merging as opposed. Yeah. So I think what we're seeing that's really exciting is, okay, now they're having these tokens. It creates an ICO, or we're able to actually sell the tokens once they vest if we feel like it's necessary. And we're already seeing liquidation events in that way, which we're obviously not seeing if they don't have the tokens. So that's pretty exciting too from a venture perspective.
It is.
Well, before we end it, I want to go back to one thing. You mentioned you're a college dropout from Ohio State. I actually went to Penn State. What do you think about education? I think so many people in Web3 come from all different sorts of backgrounds, and it's pretty exciting. And you obviously didn't finish college, have one semester left, but what do you think about the current education system? Just something that I'm really curious on.
Yeah, a couple things. One, it's highly overpriced. Two, it's really fun. And if you have the opportunity to go to college, you should do it because the social experience and life experience, even though I was a bad student, was so awesome. Like if I had to do it again, I'd absolutely go back to school, and I would absolutely have left when I left, right? Like I have zero regrets. I loved all of it. There's a ton of value in it and that experience. It's obviously really overpriced in a terrible way, especially when education's been so democratized and the access of education, right? Like there's a mismatch here. Like how is tuition keep going up as education has become more accessible, right, in mass? You could teach yourself a lot. Now, obviously, if you're a surgeon or a lawyer and all these things that you have to go through, but like you could teach yourself a lot of what you want because of what's out there. And so my hope is that people still find value in higher education, but higher education becomes much more affordable and accessible, so that people don't have to just rely on all of this resources and education available. It's like, obviously it's an incredible thing that we have, but I just feel like there's a lot that comes into college that's not just the education aspect that people should make sure that they value. But when you make the barrier so miserable to enter because you're like burdened in student loans or whatever it is to go to a public school. Like I always say it's a great school, but at the end of the day, it should be like super accessible to folks to like be able to go to, and it shouldn't be as much money as it is where everyone has to take out student loans to go there and so forth. So there's and I also think we put way too much stock in like some institutions in education as well. Not that great people don't come from those schools, but like I think we disproportionately like the ranking and how we like put, you know, the top 100 schools on this pedestal, which allows them to drive price up and then, you know, not let people have access to is problematic. So yeah, I think a reset, but at the same point, it's pretty incredible what you can learn and self-educate and be highly effective contributor in this space, right?
Also going out in the real world, I mean, you probably saw it, and you're somebody who could talk about going to YouTube and how much you learned. It's like there's only so much you learn in school that actually is applicable to the real world. And so getting that real world education. And as you mentioned, I mean, part of Web3 is the metaverse, and actually having this ability to learn online and feel like you're there and learn from the best teachers in the world, as opposed to paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to school at some of the best institutions. So I'm with you, but I'm so inspired by your story.
Literally use zero of Ohio State.
Oh,
yeah, use zero I learned at Ohio State. It is all like reading and Google where I learned everything that's applicable to what I do now.
yeah. No, it makes sense. Well, to end it, what is one piece of advice that you have for everybody listening today?
I was almost going to make a joke about college. I think the earlier you can hone in on what you really like, what gets you excited in life, whether it's music, art, video games, like hone in on it as soon as you can and like ride that. Because for me, as I wasn't a good student and therefore was a low performer because I wasn't engaged or interested in it. And I was only a high performer because I did something I was like super passionate about. So I woke up and still do every single day with this like immense fire under me to like be the best at that and whatever I'm doing. And so that could never happen if I ever did something I wasn't passionate about. I'd be the most mediocre employee in most any other category. And so I think it's really important. And so look for that early, you know, and I wish I would have done that even with gaming, although I ended up in it. You know, gaming, I was like, well, I'm not going to make video games, so I can't work in gaming. Well, there's so many things you can do. You can literally be on the finance team of Activision Blizzard or something like that and still be in games, right? You know, so there's a lot of different things. And so don't limit yourself in what you can do and try to find it as soon as you can.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you, Ryan, so much for joining the Girls Table today. If anybody would like to connect with Ryan, please visit their Twitter. He absolutely crushes it. FWiz. Last question, Ryan, why is it called FWiz? Where'd you get the name?
It's actually Fwiz, and it was from an Xbox-generated gamer tag when Xbox first came out. It was a long name, and I shortened it to just 4 letters, and I didn't know I was going to stick with it, you know, like 25 years later. So here we are.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. Appreciate you hopping on.
You got it. Take care. Thanks for having me.